The XY Advisor podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. All discussion is limited to publicly available information and should not be interpreted as legal, professional, or financial advice. XY Advisor does not hold an AFS license nor provide any financial services. Before making investment decisions, you should obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor.
Hey team, Ben Nash here. I'm one of the co-founders at XY Advisor and founder of the rapidly growing Pivot Wealth, which is my business baby. I started from scratch about 8 years ago, and I've since scaled up to become one of Australia's better known financial advice companies for high income accumulators. You can join me every Tuesday as I have the pleasure of furthering my own knowledge by interviewing some of the best people in our industry and beyond to improve every part of what we do with our advice process. We're currently hiring financial advisors and associates, so if our approach resonates, you can learn more at pivotwealth.com.au/careers.
Perpetual is a dynamic, active manager offering an extensive range of specialist investment capabilities, including Australian and global equities, credit, fixed income, multi-asset, as well as environmental, social and governance, designed to help meet the needs of clients across Australia and New Zealand. Underpinned by our long-standing and market-leading Australian equities capability, Perpetual also offers an extensive contemporary range of funds. As one of Australia's longest-serving and most trusted investment managers, our long-standing commitment is to deliver superior outcomes over the long term to clients.
Hey guys, Ben Nash from the XY Advisor team, and today I'm pumped to be here with Ash McAuliffe. Ash is the head of advice at CareSuper and comes from a big background through practice management, running advice teams. So I'm keen to pick his brain. Hopefully he's got a few silver bullets for us in terms of solutions there. Ash, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Ben. Pleasure to be here. So thanks for the great intro.
Mate, good to be chatting. And as I say, I'm holding out for those silver bullets. So we'll get there. But I thought maybe a good place to start was just maybe you could talk us through your background and how you've ended up in where you are today.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to show my age here. I started in my father's practice. He had an A&P practice. 23 years ago I started, so I was very, very young, I'll have to say, but yeah, so I'm so old that I was actually appointed as an agent. And shortly after that, the Financial Reform Act came into play, and then I was a proper authority holder. So, look, I was set for a career in science or computer science. So I started a double degree in physics and computer science, but I realised I wasn't really good enough at programming to make a living, and wasn't interested enough in physics to make a living. And while I was doing that, I was observing my dad, who had started his advice business as a second career, and he'd been with Telstra for a long time as a manager. And what I noticed about my dad was his enjoyment of work and how he felt important in people's lives. He was having an impact on people's lives through helping them, predominantly initially with insurance, but then through their investment management going forward. And he had a real enthusiasm for his work, which I didn't see when he was working at Telstra. So I was away with the army at the time, and I thought, well, that's what I'll do. And so I came back and said, Dad, can I work with you? And here I am, 23 years later. So that's how I got into advice. I spent 7 or 8 years working with Dad, and then he decided it was time to start thinking about retiring. So I moved out into the big wide world and worked with the Commonwealth Bank for a couple of years in the business of private bank, then followed with ANZ in the commercial bank, and sort of with varied success, sometimes very successful, sometimes the opposite of that. And the opportunity came up while I was at ANZ to purchase a book of clients. So I leapt at that, and that was a great learning experience, owning my own practice, particularly taking over an advice relationship that some of these clients had been clients of the previous owner for some 30, 40 years. So coming in a lot younger, with a lot of trust built up over that period of time, and having to take that baton forward was quite a heavy baton to take. It's really important that you manage and keep that trust. After a little while, that sort of ran its course, and after winding that up, I spent a bit of time at RMIT teaching in the Bachelor of Business Financial Planning major. That I really enjoyed that. After a little while there, the call of the wild, it was called from a recruiter, to be honest, but and the opportunity to come back into the advice profession with Mercer came up as a team leader in the Victorian Strategic Advice team, and over a couple of years working with Mercer, the role evolved to be the practice manager for Victoria. So there was a team in Docklands and a team in Wheelers Hill. And then I finished up at Mercer at the start of the year through a redundancy, and as that happened, the opportunity here at CareSuper came up. So I had a couple of months off, and I've got to be honest, I really needed that reset and a bit of time with the kids and family, and sort of ready to get cracking. And 2 weeks into my role here at CareSuper, so that is 23 years in a very short time, man.
Nice. I feel like we all needed a bit of a break after the chaos that has been the COVID, the pandemic and lockdowns and all of that sort of stuff. Tell us, Ash, what are you focused on? What is the head of financial advice at CareSuper? What comes across your desk?
Look, at the moment, there's 2 weeks in. There's a lot. There's a couple of little projects that were sitting on my desk with bows on them. So the role had been vacant for a little while. So there's a couple of things waiting. One of those is having a look at the different advice channels. The mandate I have is to make advice more relevant to more people, and that essentially boils down to making advice scalable and affordable for our members. And probably the most urgent priority, or the foremost priority, I should say, is digital advice, and looking for a solution there. There's some work being done, and just working through that and what that means. And coming from an IFA background, it is something that I've got a lot of interest in, because it's an efficiency tool and it's a value add, but it's also got to be right. So that's the project that I'm working through with most energy at the moment.
Super interesting stuff. And look, I'm not expecting you to, tell us all of your trade secrets or anything here, but I think we hear a lot about digital advice and can see the potential to leverage technology more in the work that we're doing with clients. I know that I've spoken to a few people that have tried it in different formats over the last little while. It is obviously a beast in terms of the complexity and all of the different parts. But for you guys, like, how do you actually tackle that? You obviously, like we all know that affordability is an issue and scalability. And I think it makes sense that we go, okay, well, how do we get it out to more people? Let's make it easier. Let's make it cheaper. But where to from there? How do you actually sort of, crack in?
Yeah, I mean, there's technology providers out there, and there's some good solutions, but ultimately it's an automation, and it needs an AI behind it. And like any automation, you're trying to take the repeatable parts of your role and sort of automate them so they can be more cost efficient and time efficient. So how we're looking at it is looking at the more simple parts of advice. So if you think of the spectrum of advice that members seek, and that's one of my learnings here at Care. I've got to stop calling people clients, they're members, so there's a little bit of a language difference, but so I'll use those two terms interchangeably from now on, if that's all right. But there's times in people's lives where they need a little bit of advice, and there's times when they need a lot, and we just want to be able to be there for them when they need that little piece of advice. And so we're starting with the very simple things. At the moment, we're looking at a risk profile and investment change. So can we take someone through an investment profile conversation? The challenge that I'm finding at the moment is that, yes, we can automate a questionnaire, but as we know, the questionnaire isn't all of the conversation. There's a conversation with the advisor afterwards. So, and there's an education piece before and after. So how do we fold that education piece and information piece into answer these 12 questions or 5 questions or whichever survey you're doing, and then make recommendations. So there's a lot of testing at the moment, and that's where we're at. And I think once that can be dialed in, then that can be expanded on. So it'll be great when we can get it, as a profession, get it right and be able to utilise those. And the term I like is it's not a robo advice solution, but it's it augments our ability as advisors to reach more people. So it's an augmented advice tool, not a standalone. Here, you don't need an advisor. Here's a tool you can get some information, get some advice based on some rules, and go forward from there. So I think it's really exciting, and there's a focus here and an importance on getting this right and getting it out so that we can give advice to more people. For the last 10 or 15 years in my career, we've been talking about the 80% of Australians who don't get advice. So that's how do we crack into that? And that's looking at other ways to deliver advice.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think over that time that we've been talking about this 80%, the cost of financial advice has doubled. So it's like, it gets a little bit more out of reach. But yeah, as you say, it is quite complex. And I know that for us in our business that we work with a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds. Most of our clients are 35 to 45. And for them, when they do a risk profiling questionnaire, most of them end up like balanced or moderately conservative when they're just doing the questionnaire on their own. And then what we do is to take them, when we do our strategy sessions, we take them on a journey and go, okay, well, this is what different assets actually are: growth investments, defensive investments. This is small company risk versus big company risk, diversification, how we manage it, active investments, passive investments, all of those things. And then in hearing that, and as we know as advisors, that typically your investment timeline should be one of the key drivers of the actual risk profile for your investment portfolio. So someone's 35 for their super fund and wants to be moderately conservative. You go, well, that seems a little bit out of whack with your timeline. Like after hearing this, what do you think? And they go, oh yeah, actually, no, I would, now that I know how all of these risks are being managed, then I'm comfortable with a higher growth portfolio because they're actually informed. But I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like if we just in the questionnaire alone that they don't quite get there. So I know that the tech's getting better. I would love to be able to pull on that to like you say, augment what we're doing so that we don't have to be the ones having that conversation necessarily, because it is fairly repeatable or highly repeatable. But it's a tricky one. So I'm interested in that space.
Well, and so I agree with you, because if you went 100% scientific on it, you would base it purely on the time horizon. Whether it's a superannuation, that's finite. Whether it's a shorter term investment, if you're looking for a shorter term goal, the science and the math says you will most likely be better off with this type of portfolio. But then you've got to fold in those human elements. We've got some volatile times at the moment, so that will influence and cast a shadow over how people feel about investing at the moment. So that's where the human element comes in. So. I think it's a challenge for the profession, but I think there's enough people investing time and effort and money into some good AI and digital solutions. So,
and so you obviously have got more exposure than most people, even though it is early days in your role there. But seeing what you've seen so far, where do you think we're going with when it comes to digital advice?
I think it will need more of an AI engine behind it. I think it will be a tool for advisors to extend their ability to advise rather than a replacement. You won't 100% use one of these tools instead of speaking to an advisor. So the smart businesses and advisors out there will be scanning the environment for what tools are available, and as I said, use these tools to augment their ability to give advice. So let's take that conversation we just had, where you might have this ability for a customer or client to complete a risk profile questionnaire, get some advice, but then also just come back to you with that information already. Half the conversation had, and you just need to top it off. So that you can get out to more people that way. So where we're heading is it will enhance our conversations and allow us to have more conversations rather than replace conversations.
And so how do you think that we'll get to a point where we can have a digital only solution for this, or do you think there needs to be an advisor involved?
I do think we get there. I'd be reluctant to say we'd never get there. If I can buy a car that can drive me home, surely I can I can buy a program that can help me invest. So I think it'd be short-sighted to say no, we'll never get there. But there's a lot of work to be done in the meantime, and I think we're close.
Nice. Well, I look forward to our next podcast conversation, and you can give me the update on that one. Ash, I'm keen to shift gears a little bit and talk about sort of practice management and advice management overall. Obviously, like we all know that, you know, part of how we make things more accessible is, like you say, make it efficient, make it cheaper as well. And I think that practice management can play a role in that with how we're doing what we're doing. What do you think are the real keys to success when it comes to actually running an advice team?
Look, there's a baseline or some hygiene factors are good systems, so that you don't have you're not putting speed humps in front of your people. But what I've found is a team runs really well when the team themselves are coherent and they feel supported. They've got enough people in the team. They've got clarity in their role, and they're operating as a team. So that the team being greater than the sum of its parts is probably where I've seen most value in providing an efficient service. So when you've got everyone, the analogy I used to use with my old team was the log. So if you're familiar with the Navy SEAL training, where they've got to all carry that big heavy log, and at different times people will be stronger or people will have weak days and they won't be able to take the full weight of the log, but the rest of the team are there. But at some point, everyone's got to take a little bit of the weight and share, and the log gets where it's got to go. So I've got to disclose right here, I'm very terrible at analogies. But
that was a good one. I don't know what you're talking about.
But look, and honestly, a well-functioning team, because people are well supported, they trust their leadership, they want to come to work, they're happy to come to work. I find that is probably the most efficient thing you can do for a team, is make sure that everyone's on board and everyone's happy to be at work.
And so you know my next question already. How do we do that?
Well, it's a long and slow, hard grind. It does start with trust in your leadership. You need to be a leader that shows some vulnerability. It's okay to make mistakes as a leader and own them and demonstrate your accountability with those. And then that gives people permission to put their hand up and say, hey, listen, I'm struggling today. I need some help with this. And then that sort of builds that trust and accountability. Once you've got some accountability for the outcome, you can sort of move ahead of the team. There's a book that I if you're looking for a recommended reading, it's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Peter Lencioni. That was put to me when I was at Mercer as, hey, have a read of this, and being able to take that methodology on board really did help in sort of establishing that trust and really focus some commitment from the whole team to the end goal. And I saw some fantastic things in that team.
Yeah, I think that accountability to outcomes is the key part, that people need to know what those outcomes are, that they need to be measured consistently and celebrated when they're good and addressed when they're not where we want them to be, because everyone in teams have a job to do a role, and a role is tied to outcomes. So it's like we're hiring we love the people, but we're hiring for roles, and then it's that role needs to deliver certain results. But I think it sort of ties in with practice management, because I know for us that when the business was much smaller, or in the earlier days of the business before we had focused on this, that we know what sort of we want happy clients and to make some money. but then what are the things that need to happen in between? And it's every business is a bit different because you've got different groups of clients, different teams as well, that it takes a while to figure out what are those things, what do we measure along the way, and how do we actually do that in an efficient way so that we're not spending all of our time measuring everything as opposed to actually doing the doing as well. So
exactly. And what do you measure and how do you measure it, and how do you act and how do you respond when it's not up to the standard? So you've got to respond constructively with, okay, this is where we fell short. Let's get together and see how we can fix that up, and how do we fill that gap going forward. And rather than attack it with some compassion, I think is important as well. So what happened? What do you need for us to move forward and not have that shortfall again? So.
Attack with compassion. I like that. That's.
I just made that up, Ben. So, but you do. You need to. And I've used this term before, but as leaders, we're custodians of people's livelihood, their careers. So you need to be that person that helps them work forward in their career and get what they want out of their career, and that'll come back to you as an owner of a business or a leader of a team, whatever it is. But if you can, this is an old Zig Ziglarism. You can get whatever you want as long as you help enough other people get what they want, and that sort of resonates as in leadership as well. He delivered that as a sales context, but I'm thinking as a leader, if I can help my team grow and achieve what they need to achieve in their career, then that will sort of work through as that'll come back to benefit me as their leader.
Totally. What do you think? You've been involved a couple of decades in advice and in sort of leadership roles within advice teams as well. What have been some of the biggest shifts in how advice businesses work and how teams function that you've seen?
What I've seen is, and from when I started to my time with the bank, was very, very numbers driven, very, what have you done today to move forward, which is good. But probably the biggest shift is towards advice being more of as a social science than an investment mathematical type career. So how we connect with our clients and members and customers, whichever one you want to call them, how we connect with them on a personal level and allows us to do a better job for them. So that's probably the biggest shift I've seen, where it is very much what conversations are we having, how do we feel, how do our clients feel, rather than I know the answer, here it is, and I'll sell it to you for a price.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's sort of like you were saying when it comes to risk profiling, like we know the scientific answer, but it's not always the same answer when you put the people overlay on things. On the flip side of that question, Ash, what are some of the things that haven't changed?
Well, risk profiling hasn't changed. It's still a questionnaire, and we get a result. And I think broadly as a profession, we recognise that that's not the right solution. That is one thing that hasn't changed. But at the end of the day, and probably coming back to that time frame. So I was appointed as an agent, then we had Financial Reform Act, and we had FOFA, and we've got the Royal Commission. What hasn't changed in this profession is that by and large, the advice professionals want to get the best outcome for their clients, and there's the 1%ers that sort of ruin it for the rest of us, but there's the systems and processes behind it where the motivations come from. That aside, by and large, what hasn't changed is that people in this profession do want to get the best outcome for their clients. So how we need to do that with a regulatory framework, that won't stop changing, I don't think. The only change I've experienced has been, well, the only constant has been change. Yeah. So
totally.
That's something that hasn't changed.
Ash, I know that you're one of the things that you're really passionate about is education. Obviously working in that space, and I think as advisors we always work in this space all the time, and as leaders within teams as well, that we're constantly educating. I'm sure that you probably know the stats better than I do when it comes to, the gaps that we're facing around new entrants coming into the industry and advice. Can you give us a bit of your thoughts around where to from here?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of things I've noticed, which I went into my role at the university with some preconceptions about what was happening, and then to find that there was a lot of students enrolling in sort of financial advice majors. So that was particularly at RMIT and a couple of other universities as well. But there were some large classes. There was some classes at RMIT, the first year financial planning subject had 400 people in it, right? But they were from other degrees as well. It was an elective. But I also noticed some people come across into that financial planning stream because they'd done that elective. So in the final year subject that I taught, we had people who started a marketing degree or started an engineering degree, but then through that elective, they came across to advice because, it's a great career. Why wouldn't you? The problem, I think, is, or not the problem, the blockage is we need somewhere for them to go. The graduates are coming through, and as a side note, one thing, the gender balance was there as well. So the graduates were a good balance of gender. It wasn't skewed one way or the other. So that gives me hope for where we end up forward as far as gender balance is concerned. The students, quite often, some of them my best students, they ended up at places like KPMG or EY because they had graduate programs. And that was a good place to go. And a lot of them had done double degrees in accounting as well as financial planning. Having said that, I've also, I've followed some of the careers of some of my former students as well, and very impressed. Obviously, they've had some good instruction through their studies, but seeing the people come through and they've had to fight through to find a role and find a company that will support them through. So the next step is us as a profession to make sure they've got a soft landing place so they can study through and know that there's going to be somewhere for them to start work at the end of the day. And where there's practices screaming out for talent, there's also
I'm one of those ones.
Yes, but there's also it's not very easy to bring on someone just out of university. You think that's a 21-year-old who may or may not even have their own superannuation account, depending on whether they've worked through their career or not. So we can't just, we really can't do what, happened in my generation was off you go, there's you're here, go give some advice. We need to develop more fully the entry to the profession. And that includes having roles that are an entry-level graduate program that gives the students a taste of the different parts of our profession, and then guides them through that professional year. So I don't think there'll be too many students that will do their degree, go straight into a PY, and then a year after that be giving advice. The exceptions obviously being career changes. So, or people have been in sort of financial services more generally, and they've done their study and now they want to give advice. Whereas I think a better way is to put a graduate program in place that is specific to advice. And look, I'd like to say that there's a few of us working on that at the moment, and not that's something that's important to me here at CareSuper, but also to the rest of the professionals as well. So hopefully we can grow our own talent, and that does feed back to our conversation around what's important in a team is making sure that the people in your team have got some career progression. So having the people that are in entry level roles, they can see the next step, and the next step being an associate advisor with professional year built into that role, and then they can see themselves into a junior advisor, then senior advisor, and away they go. So if they can't see where they're going, it's going to be really hard for them to move forward.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I think that not a lot of businesses are built in different ways. Different businesses are built in different ways, and it's often the ones that are built for more entry level roles that I've found that there's quite a lot of those that they want people to be more to not like they're hiring people for roles, and there's stuff that they need to get done. So they're less of a focus on progression. Whereas for a business like us, we want everyone to be progressing, but we struggle more with the entry level roles because everyone's progressing. So it's like we're going to have to pour all of these resources into a new grad out of the industry. And I recognize the pathway there. That's how I learnt myself. But yeah, I feel like we need to do something. And I was mentioned offline that like the Horizons program, which I think was a fantastic program in terms of what it actually delivered through the structured training process. Some challenges, I think, for the people that were then sort of moved into the AMP advice ecosystem, and it was probably a little bit inconsistent from what I've heard, the role versus the actual, structured training. But I think that sort of thing needs to exist because we're trying to get more people seeking advice, and more people are seeking advice. Advice is getting better. Advice is getting more complicated. It's getting more expensive, more resource intensive. That we need we need more people. And I can't remember the stats off the top of my head. Maybe you know them, but some like pathetic number of new advisors registered over the last couple of years since all of this stuff came in. We've actually got 3 people in our business going through the PY, so I hope to do my little bit to add to those numbers over the next little while. But yeah, it takes some time, and in the meantime, we've all got needs. Advisors are difficult to come by. I feel like we've been recruiting for an advisor role for a year in the business, and the right people is challenging. So I do feel like we need to do something. It seems like a complex beast to get there.
It is, and in the absence, and look, I'm a fan of the Horizons program. I've hired people out of it, and also I've seen the programs that the banks used to have. But in the absence of large organisations taking that mantle, I think there's an opportunity for a collective to get together and do the same thing. What do we want this to look like, and move forward in that way? So you get a number of small practices that can get together and sort of share that burden. We're trying to hire 2 planners in our Sydney team as well, and that's sort of a challenge where we are finding it challenging. We've got a couple of good candidates, and hopefully we can get them on board. But we're finding people, we accept another offer here or this, that, and the other thing. So it is a very, very competitive marketplace. But we can, if a number of small organisations, associations, whatever, can get together and put a collective together, then I think we can solve that mystery without relying on a large organisation. And even here, I don't think, a super fund like us, we're not big enough to go, okay, well, let's go and get 10 grads. We need to sort of partner with other organisations to say, we're probably going to need a grad every year, but we need a bit more rigour and process around the selection. Where do we find the grads? How many businesses are out there introducing themselves to the universities? There's a couple of advisors that have been on this show before who I've met because they came to the university when I was working there, and the students absolutely loved it. So I think there is an opportunity to fill that void left by the Horizons of the world with a collective effort, and then there's a little bit more control over what the career aspirations are.
Totally. And I think that the extra, like you say, that it's a tough market, but advice is such a personal thing that every business does it a little bit differently. So it's not like you just need to find a financial advisor. It's like you need to find a financial advisor that wants to do the work that fits in with your business, that wants to work with the clients that you want to work with, that wants to work in the way that your business wants to work as well. So it's like you've got a small pool to begin with, but then you need to, like, to run a good business, you need to select and chunk that pool down even further. So I think the more diverse sort of approaches that we can get in, it means that we're going to have the right advisors for the right roles, and that just benefits everyone, and then the right clients as well.
That is, you hit the nail on the head there. That's critical. Being an advisor is too hard if you're not aligned with the direction of the business you're working for, or it's just too hard. You probably speak to this more than I will, but as a business owner, if the people on your team aren't sort of really 100% committed to the direction you want to take your business, then it's just going to create friction. So,
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I could talk about hiring and recruitment and the frustrations around that all day, but I'll save everyone's ears. Ash, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights. My last question for you, if you could go back to your babyface self and starting out in advice and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Relax. Okay, relax and enjoy the ride. As a young planner, I was really, and I still see it today, so it's probably pertinent. I really went hard on my technical skills, which you need to. They're a foundation skill. But relax and get to know the people you're talking to. And the piece of advice I would have given myself is, Ash, they don't need to know how the watch works. They just want to know the time. So just
you
really
said you weren't good
focus
at analogies. That's a great one.
I stole that from my dad. So, but no, that's just, relax and enjoy the start of your career. I was very ambitious, wanted to move forward, and anxious to prove myself. And where I would love to go back and just do it all again, but I'll probably, I'm happy with where I've ended up. So,
nice one. Wise words there. I think that the people side, it's like you say, the technical part is one part, but probably the bigger part, as you can see from your career and how that's progressed, is the people element and all of the stuff that sits around it. So, wise words there. Ash, thank you again so much for sharing your insights, mate. I'm super pumped to see where things go, especially look forward to that digital advice update moving forward, mate, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. Always a pleasure.